Well, thank you for joining us in another video. I'm Dan Kirk here at Brooks & Kirk. Now, this video is for the purpose of revision for our apprentices that are studying the digital marketing apprenticeship. So we thought we might upload this if it's useful for others. So if you're interested in me, our company, or about Brooks & Kirk, or even the digital marketing apprenticeship, then please do feel free to head over to brooksandkirk.co.uk, where you can find a bit more about it. If you find this useful, please do like. If you've got a comment, yeah, fantastic, and you're welcome to share it. Take care. You've had quite a bit of experience using lots of web features and services and things like that, but that's what this video is going to focus on. You've spent a lot of this month and a bit of last month doing quite a bit of shadowing and things like that as well, but the learning objectives for this session is to have an understanding of key services and components that's required to create and distribute web content online. What should you be able to do? This is the key criteria that's in the apprenticeship for the coding unit. You've got to be able to describe the features offered by web hosting management platforms. You need to be able to explain the benefits of using web authoring platforms, and also explain how web authoring platforms enable content creation and modification. And I believe you've been using some of these things already as part of your job. But what do you know so far
about these?
Yeah.
Let's see, web hosting management platforms. If I had to guess, is that MySQL? Is that relating to that?
It's a feature, it's a tool, it's a piece of software that is enabled by this kind of thing for sure, but it's not the WHM itself. What about web authoring platforms?
I don't know what a web authoring platform is.
Okay, it's mainly jargon, if I'm being perfectly honest. When I give you a load of examples, you'll be like, well, of course. So let's just recap. So the core components for web content, you must have a web server, or if you can't afford that, because it is quite expensive to have your own server, you'll have some paid web hosting.
Yep.
It needs to have appropriate management software for us as administrators be able to do anything with it. It's all well and good having a server somewhere in the cloud, but if you can't configure it in any way, it's a nightmare. Now you can go and develop your own website using Notepad and just code it from scratch, but it's an utter waste of anybody's time, because there's plenty of authoring platforms that's already in the market to help create content quicker. There's quite a few other benefits of using web authoring platforms instead of just trying to go about it on your own. So obviously it needs an internet connection and things like that. That's a standard. Web server. What is a web server in your opinion?
A web server, even though it's not exactly a configuration of components, it's technically something that's been assigned to a device that then people make a request to. So it has a specific job. For a web server, if it's technically, it could host a website. I mean, that's literally a web server, but it could also be other things. And if I want to view a website, I need to make a request from my device to the web server. Then it will give me all the information, like the images, the links, where I need to go. It should all be file managed in a big old directory.
I mean, you can host a website on a Raspberry Pi, but it's not that reliable and it won't be very fast. Technically, you can do it, for sure. It is definitely achievable, but it's a computer of some kind. It needs to be on 24/7. There's no point having a website only available from 9 till 5. That's just not how it works. They're usually deployed in data centers for that exact reason, because if it's at a data center, it's got dedicated connections and the relevant cooling. It's going to be a reliable system.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have what's called bare metal, which is exactly what it says on the tin, really. You've physically got a computer, a server in a data center that is your own. Nobody else uses it. Expensive, obviously. You then also have a VPS. Do you know what a VPS is?
No.
So it's a virtual private server, virtual being the key thing. So you could have a bare metal server with, say, 64 processing cores, half a terabyte of RAM, tons of hard drive storage and stuff like that. But to have that purely as one machine, it's incredibly wasteful. So what you can do in a data center is use a piece of software like VMware, like we looked at previously, and you can create virtual machines that work on that physical server.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have a virtual private server that's got an allocation of those processors, an allocation of that RAM, a virtual hard disk, and all that sort of good stuff to give it its storage. VPSs are cheaper than a bare metal server for those exact reasons. And then you can also get just a web hosting account, which is just a single account on a virtual private server. So that's the smallest. That is the smallest output, and that's your most large and big service, obviously. So you can actually end up with one web server hosting 30, 40, 50 plus web accounts. Obviously, the more you have, the more resource intensive it'll be. Again, it must be on 24/7, 7 days a week. And how that they achieve that is things like backup power supplies. So if there's a power surge or something like that, it won't take everything offline. It's all about redundancy as well, to make sure there's more than one thing that could go. If one thing goes wrong, there's a backup of some kind, and that's with network adapters, switches, routers. There's always at least 2 in a data center, at least, in case one thing fails.
Okay.
They also got to be close to where the main target audience is. There's no point us, Brooks and Kirk, having a server located in America, because it takes time for that web traffic to move across the fiber optic cables under the ocean. And this is all measured. Do you know what it's measured in this time?
No.
Have you heard of ping?
Oh, okay, yes.
And it all impacts a ping. So if you go into America, you're going to have a ping in excess of 100 milliseconds. Whereas if you've got something locally in the UK, you're more likely to get around 20 milliseconds. And I know it sounds so small, but if you've got a website that's loading 14 different scripts, 15 different images of various size, fonts, and loads of server-side processing, every single hop to and from the client to the server, it's just going to take an absolute age. That's what gives you the impression of speed, really. It's not the bandwidth, it's the ping, the latency. So it's got to be close to where the target audience lives. Yes, of course, it's got to be a fast machine. There's no point having a Raspberry Pi dealing with a multi-million-pound organisation's website. Just wouldn't work. It does have to be able to retrieve that content quickly, so it's all about having it on the right type of storage. For the benefit of those watching, can you detail some different types of physical storage?
So what? Hard drive, SSD, NVMe,
So
SSD.
these are all different flavors of storage. So you've got a physical hard drive, a spinning rust hard drive, as they call them. They're the slowest type. Web content is best served on a solid state drive of some kind, so that it's when you're working with tiny little files, the hard drive can quickly get that without having to wait for the arm to move across a spinning platter. So it's got to be able to serve those files quickly. It needs a good level of bandwidth, because the moment you start dealing with video or anything like that, it's going to be huge. The concurrent traffic So yeah, they tend to be in a data center with at least a 1 gig internet connection per device, usually. If not higher, they might have a 10 gig connection to the exchange, and then that's divvied up between the physical servers that are present in the data center.
Okay.
And you've got to be able to access it, and I don't physically mean traveling to the location and going to your server and plugging a keyboard and mouse in. That's not how it works because of the security implications. You just got to be able to dial into it somehow and remotely access the services, and that's where those protocols such as SSH and things like that come in, because that allows you to connect to something remotely and do configuration. So you've I know this month you've spent quite a bit of time looking and observing me doing my job. Now I'm going to have to blur out quite a lot of this stuff, but we've got one piece of software called Cpanel, which is WHM. It's web host management software, essentially. And this is the system that we as administrators can communicate with subsystems more quickly. So yes, I could manage email via the command line, but that would take forever. And sometimes you just need to be able to quickly create an email account for your customers and your clients. So everything to do with email. It also allows us to browse the server's own data quickly. So you can quickly go into the actual HTML folder where content is served. This is what would be served when you type in a web address. You can check things like the current disk usage of different items. This will take a while. I shouldn't probably click that. I also shouldn't have clicked close. That's another editing opportunity. Databases. Why do we have databases for web content in the web domain?
Because there is so much information. I mean, there's usernames, emails, content they've uploaded, content you uploaded, images. Everything needs to be stored somewhere and retrieved.
Every single parameter and setting that you change somehow and somewhere goes into a database. Let's say you run an e-commerce site. What is that? That's a bit of jargon. What's an e-commerce site?
It's just an online. How's the best way to explain commerce? It's like a shopping.
Yeah.
Like a shopping store online is the best way.
Exactly. So you're going to have a database with all your products, what the product is, an image of the product, how much it costs, how many items are in stock. All of these values will be stored in a database, but we need to be able to manage that as a web administrator, because if there's a problem, then you can go in and try and fix it and find out, well, okay, have we got somebody's username wrong or something like that? You might need to go into the Backend and have a look at what that looks like. I'm in a piece of software here called PHP MyAdmin. Could you kind of describe what this might do?
It just gives you an easy visual way of looking at all the data and all the tables and everything that's stored in the backend, correct?
Yeah, perfect.
It's a GUI.
Exactly. A GUI, again, is another acronym that stands for...
graphical user interface.
Yeah, spot on. So yeah, it gives us a GUI of our database, so we're not having to do it all via SQL. And SQL, can you remember what SQL is?
No, I don't.
Server query language. So it allows us to query databases from code, and that's how it all works. So your actual HTML files will be calling calling for certain items from the database, and it'll all tend to be done via MySQL. So yeah, let's carry on. What else can you do in this? You can manage your domains, so you can purchase extra web names. You could even create what's called an add-on domain or a subdomain. So you could have shop.myshop.com, or you could have sale.myshop.com, and the sale bit would be the subdomain because it's in front of it. So you can have kind of separate websites embedded inside of it.
So
DNS.
it would come before, not after.
Well, you see, this is a subdomain of that, which is a subdomain of that. That's a bit extreme, but yeah, that's kind of how it works. There's lots of other analytical tools that's useful, so you can see if there's any problems. You can also manage that security access that we mentioned earlier, whom can dial into the server and things like that. Yeah, you can actually pre-install the next item, which, if I go back to this, from the WHM consoles, you can often install our web authoring packages. So, what web authoring packages have you used so far?
I don't know if I have I? Not personally.
Yes, you have.
I have.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Okay. If I help explain what a web authoring package is, then it might make sense. So the web authoring platform, it does all the heavy lifting. You don't have to code the website from scratch. It's something you can just install, and then it allows you to customize and modify your content to help you build a website.
So it's WordPress.
That's one example. See, I knew you knew it. It allows us to deploy customizable themes. So if you want a specific look to your style, whether you want sleek or whether you want a bit more fun and cartoony or whatever it may be, there's a theme for everything on these sorts of things. Such a huge variety of plugins are often available for popular web authoring tools. So have you come across or had to use any plugins yet?
Yeah.
Such as?
I've got a list of them. One was for slideshows, Yoast for SEO, a couple others as well.
Yeah, so every time you want an extra feature, not everybody would need that feature installed, so you can have it as a plugin. So let's say you wanted a shopping cart tool. That's such an American phrase, forgive me. But let's say you wanted some forms, some data capture forms, email marketing, mailing list subscriptions, that sort of stuff would just be a plugin that you could install. Yeah, payment gateways as well. You could have a link directly to PayPal. That would be a plugin, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Also, lots of the analytical tools. We as web marketers, we need to know that our content is driving traffic. So you'll need some analytic tools. So have you got any ideas of popular analytic tools, the names of them?
Once an Insight.
Yeah,
that's the main one I can think of. I mean, there's technically others you can use depending on what you're looking for. Email marketing. I mean, there's what's it? MailChimp. There's MailerLite.
well, that would taking it away from you and the host, but you'll have plugins such as Google Analytical Tools plugin that will then do its job and report it to a global platform for you to administer that way. But the actual plugin must be installed locally. WYSIWYG, content creators. Do you know what that's an acronym for?
No, and there's no way I'm going to guess that.
What you see is what you'll get. Content creators.
Oh.
So it's a WYSIWYG editor is a tool often in lots of web authoring tools, because people know that you can't just code HTML off the top of your head and develop your table if you've got a product description or whatever. But people are comfortable using word processing software like Microsoft Word, so they'll kind of give you like table construction tools. You can change your font with a series of buttons, and that will create the HTML code for you. They are WYSIWYG content editors.
Okay.
Just like you would do a post on social media where you're changing your font color and stuff like that. That is having to be hard coded into code, but you're not having to do it at all as the content creator. You're just communicating with the WYSIWYG editor.
Okay.
Yeah? So WordPress, would you like to share your screen so that you can talk us through some of the things that are in it?
I didn't expect I'd need it open, but yeah, sure. 1 second.
So, go for it.
All right, so this is technically the back end, but one
Back
of
end of
them
what platform? Do you know?
of uh, WordPress Themify.
Yeah. So what is Themify?
Themify is a theme that you can use. It just makes it easier to edit things like uh, colors, how you lay out everything, how you want navigation to work. It allows you to put in custom CSS.
What's CSS?
It's a code language that I cannot remember the acronym for, but is nonetheless it is code.
Cascading style sheets.
Damn it.
You might have to remember that.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw it down. Yeah, but there is also other ways of editing things. So I could turn on Themify Builder, which then allows me to edit things like this, which makes it a lot easier than doing it through the
Edit things
back
like
end.
what?
Um, it allows me to edit the modules, or at least it allows me to add modules and edit the layout. So I don't want to butcher my website, but I could throw in an opt-in form right here, and then if I link that up with the API key to
What's
Mailchimp,
an API key?
API key was
I don't expect you to know what the acronym stands for because I can't even recall it off the top of my head. But what does it do?
it pretty much tells when someone comes onto the website and says, "Oh, I want to sign into this opt-in form," puts their name in, puts their email in, and hits subscribe. It will then transfer that information over to my Mailchimp, where I have a list of people, and then I can mess about with that, send them an email, welcome them, and then retarget them however much I want, unless they opt out.
Okay, so just to help anybody that's reviewing this for revision, an API is something that developers would create to allow different systems to work with each other. So let's say you're using Google Drive, hypothetically. In Google Drive, they will allow their content creators, their developers, you'd create an API, a program, an application, and that API with the correct permissions, you could then install that on different websites that's obviously not a Google website, and they might be then able to use Dropbox. Not Dropbox, that's a different API, but you get the drift. So Dropbox, you can have an API which would then allow file storage, so it allows your website that you have created to communicate with other services. So an API is like the tools, the instructions in which it allows it to work in that domain. Does that make sense?
So pretty much it's just an instruction to use one of the servers.
Yeah, exactly. So let me try and break it down again. So let's say Dropbox has got an API, okay, and your website, you want to be able to have your visitors upload or download a folder, a file or something. You might not want to host that on your own website because if they're dealing with big files, it'll fill up very quickly and web hosting is very expensive. But you might be able to have an API installed on your Dropbox account where then you can integrate that within your website, and your website will know, okay, Dropbox is a thing that I can use. It allows me to upload, download, rename, and it gives that all those commands so that it can manage it through code as opposed to having to do it through the graphical user interface.
Right. Okay.
Likewise, PayPal would have an API which would allow transactions to take place on other websites, not actually through PayPal itself. So it can pass that information through to PayPal using their API. So yeah, that's in your example. There would be the API that you've installed from Mailchimp, which would allow you to store data in a Mailchimp's server that's originated from your server, essentially. Okay. So what else can you do with WordPress then? So you mentioned it. So you're demonstrating now that it allows you to modify pages quite easily.
Yeah. I mean, I can also go more granular. I could change font, I can change color, I can change how it appears. margins, if I wanted to add a border.
Demonstrate entering a little bit of text in a text box of some kind.
Yeah. Perfect.
There's your WYSIWYG editor. Right there. That's it. Because you can see that... so in the WYSIWYG editor here, it will, instead of you having to program the code in the web page or change its font style or whatever, it's doing it in this editor and then impacting it on there. So what you see is what you're getting. That's where it gets that name from.
Okay.
Right, well, let's... any other features of something like WordPress that you think's useful?
Let's see. I mean, if I go out of this, no, I already mentioned it. It's all. I mean, apart from the fact that I can just do this and see everything in just one easy way. I mean, my plugin, for instance, pops up right down here. If I had to manually get all this information from Google Analytics and not have it all in one place, that would be incredible pain. So yeah, I mean, it just makes life a lot easier.
Okay, cool. I think you can stop sharing the screen now if you want.
Okie dokie.
So, you do know it because you're using it quite a lot, actually. So, in summary for this session, if I just take us back to those original learning outcomes that the awarding body want us to hit, because you've got to be able to describe the features offered by WHM systems. So, like Cpanel, how could you describe those features to me for this video?
So, I'll describe the features of a web hosting platform.
Yeah.
It just creates a dashboard really for you to control everything on the web server, correct? Or your allocation of the web server.
Such as what other things?
So the website, the database, those are the main things, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Control the database, the users. Oh yeah, another thing I think worth commenting on. I don't tend to use it much myself, but you can create file transfer protocol accounts. So this will allow you to access the web server as if it's a drive in my computer sometimes. I think FTP on its own now is quite insecure, and I personally don't use it for that reason, but you can allow you to drop your own files into your web server. So yeah, absolutely. And then the next thing, the benefits of using web authoring platforms like WordPress that you mentioned.
Where to even begin?
That's what I like to hear.
It just makes life so much easier. The fact that I have everything I need in just one place it saves me so much time. I can edit everything I need, like words. I can change the layout of stuff really quickly. Rather than having to go in and code it all myself, it is just a time saver.
Yeah. So now you're getting familiar with the sort of language that the awarding body expect you to be aware of, because they might use that sort of jargon in the test. So yeah, it's your job to kind of understand, well, what actually do they on about? Oh, right, Cpanel. What's the purpose of Cpanel? Well, blah. Oh, WordPress, blah. Okay. And you've kind of explained this question with that one.
Oh.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think we'll call it there for this session, if you like. Have you got any questions that you need to ask about these things?
No, not right now.
Fair enough.
I'll just research it more. Get used to the you said the jargon, and then once it sticks,
well,
it's better.
research is obviously one way of getting knowledge, but sometimes actively doing it, which is why you've been allocated your own project for a web creation activity, because that's the best way to learn, is by doing it and the problems that you face. So yeah, thanks for this, and yeah, I'll get this edited and uploaded for revision purposes. See you later.
All right, bye.